Alien girl asked the human for a place to sit, but why she chose his step was the quiet reveal. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character, Ethan Cole, sitting on the concrete step outside his small repair unit as the last stretch of evening sun hit the industrial block. The heat radiated from the metal rails behind him, humming like a tired engine winding down after a long day. Dust lifted off the street every time a shuttle passed overhead, the air shifting with the faint smell of hot copper and filtered ozone. Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his glove, the old fabric creaking as he leaned forward to adjust the loose filter plate in his hands. His tools clicked in the quiet, a rhythm he knew better than any song. The step beneath him was rough, a little chipped, but it was where he always sat after a shift, letting the warmth settle in his bones. That was when he heard the soft scrape of shoes on the ground, light and hesitant. He looked up. She stood a few feet away, tall and thin, her skin a pale violet touched by the fading light. Her eyes, wide and unsure, carried a quiet shimmer like glass catching sunrise. She held her arms close to her chest, as if guarding something fragile. "Human," she said softly, her voice steady but worn around the edges. "May I sit?" Ethan nodded toward the old metal chair beside the door, the one with the loose leg that wobbled if you breathed too hard. "Sure, chair's free." But she didn't look at the chair. Instead, her gaze lowered toward his step, the rough concrete spot right beside him. She moved slowly, careful with every motion, and lowered herself onto the step, her knees drawing close as if the ground itself might disappear if she trusted it too quickly. Ethan blinked, unsure what to say. She chose the lowest place she could find, even though he had offered something better. Her breath came out in a trembling sigh, barely audible over the distant hum of shuttle engines. Ethan glanced sideways, noticing the fine dust clinging to the soles of her shoes, the faint shimmer of tiredness in her posture. "Rough day?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer, not with words. Instead, she let her shoulders ease down, just slightly, as if the step itself was giving her something she hadn't had all day, steady ground. The evening light shifted, brushing the edges of her face in muted gold. She sat still, like she was waiting for the world to stop spinning, and for the first time Ethan sensed that she hadn't chosen his step because she needed a place to sit, but because she needed a place to rest. A real one, a safe one, and without knowing exactly why, he found himself sitting just a little straighter, giving her space without pulling away, letting the quiet settle between them like a gentle promise. The streetlights flickered on one by one as the last of the daylight drained from the industrial block, leaving the air tinted with a soft amber glow. Ethan stayed where he was on the concrete step, tools resting loosely in his hands, watching the violet-skinned girl beside him settle into the quiet, as if she had not felt it in a long time. Her breathing steadied, the faint shimmer on her skin catching the warm light like dust floating in a sunbeam. She kept her gaze lowered, studying the edge of the step as though it held some meaning only she understood. Ethan cleared his throat gently, not wanting to startle her. "You sure you are all right sitting there?" he asked. "That chair might not be pretty, but it will hold." She shook her head once, a small slow motion, her silver-flecked eyes lifting just enough to meet his before dropping again. "Here is better," she murmured, almost too quietly for him to hear. Ethan did not know what to say to that, so he let the silence return. It felt like the right thing to do. The air around them cooled, carrying the faint hum of cargo haulers overhead. Far off, the night shift siren sounded, but it was softer here, muted by distance and the old buildings around them. Ethan noticed the way her shoulders eased with every passing moment, the tension slowly unwinding like a tightly coiled spring. She was exhausted. Anyone could see that, and she was trying not to show it. "You came a long way?" he asked after a while, keeping his voice even, gentle. She hesitated before answering. "Too far," she said. Her fingers brushed the edge of the step again, tracing the rough concrete as if she were memorizing the shape of it. "I did not know where else to go. I walked until I saw light." Ethan glanced at the dim porch lamp above them, surprised that something so small had guided her to him. "Well," he said quietly, "you picked a safe spot to stop." She studied him, not suspiciously, but with the careful curiosity of someone learning a new language spoken without words. "Human," she said softly, "do you always sit outside like this?" Ethan shrugged. "Most nights. Helps me clear my head." She seemed to consider that, her eyes drifting up toward the narrow strip of sky visible between the rooftops. "We do not sit low where I come from," she said. "Not on ground. Not on steps. It means something different there." Ethan waited, unsure if she meant to continue. She did. "To sit lower than someone else is to ask for peace," she whispered. "A small request. A quiet one." Ethan's hand stilled on his tools. The meaning settled between them, soft as falling dust. She had not chosen the step because she needed rest. She had chosen it because she was asking for something she did not know how to say aloud. He looked at her gently. "You are safe here," he said, his voice low but certain. She nodded once, her eyes shimmering with a hint of relief. Not dramatic, not loud, just quiet. Real. The kind of quiet that felt like the beginning of something steady. Something human. Something she might have been searching for far longer than the walk that brought her to his step. The night settled more fully over the industrial block, turning the edges of everything softer, quieter. Ethan stayed on the concrete step with Leary still seated beside him, the small porch lamp above casting a gentle circle of warm light around them. It made her violet skin look almost translucent, like thin glass touched by moonlight. For a long time, she said nothing, and Ethan did not push her. He just listened to the faint hum of the circulation vents across the street and the occasional rattle of metal as the cooling pipes contracted. The stillness felt fragile, but not uncomfortable. She finally spoke again, her voice steady but tired. "Human Ethan," she said, pronouncing his name carefully as if fitting it into her own language. "Does everyone here have a place like this?" Ethan glanced at the worn concrete beneath them. "A step." She nodded. "A space that is theirs. A space that is small but safe." Ethan thought about it. "I guess most people do," he said. "Sometimes it is a porch, or a couch, or the back of a truck. Just a spot where life feels less loud for a minute." She absorbed that with a slow inhale, her eyes drifting toward the lamp above them. Its soft glow reflected faintly in her pupils, turning them almost silver. "We do not have this," she said quietly. "Everything is shared. Everything is watched. You stand where you are told to stand. You rest where you are told to rest." She paused, letting the words settle into the night. "I did not know it could be different." Ethan set his tools down beside him, giving her his full attention. "Different does not always mean better," he said gently. "But sometimes it means freer." She looked down at the step again, almost in wonder, as if it were some kind of relic. "When I chose this place," she said softly, "I thought you might tell me to move." Ethan let out a quiet breath. "Why would I do that?" Her fingers brushed the concrete again, tracing a crack that ran along the edge. "Because it is yours," she said. "And I am not." The simplicity of her words hit him with a kind of quiet weight. He shook his head slowly. "Anyone is welcome to sit here," he said. "It is just a step. It is not much." She turned her head slightly, studying his face with an expression that was not quite a smile, but carried the shape of one. "To me," she said softly, "it is more than enough." A faint breeze drifted through the street, carrying the cool scent of metal and night air. It tugged lightly at her hair, and she gathered it behind her ear. In a small, careful motion, for the first time since she had arrived, her shoulders seemed to settle fully, as though something inside her had finally found room to breathe. Ethan watched her for a moment longer, then reached behind him and adjusted the porch lamp so the light would fall more gently against her. "You can stay here as long as you need," he said. She looked at him, her eyes steady and clear. "Thank you, human Ethan," she whispered. And though the night around them stayed quiet, something about the way she said it felt like the beginning of a bridge being built between two very different worlds. Just a step, just a moment, but enough to change the way the darkness felt. The night deepened in a slow, steady way, the kind that made every sound feel closer. The soft hum of the ventilation units across the street blended with the distant rumble of cargo haulers, creating a low backdrop that almost felt like breathing. Ethan stayed on the concrete step with Leary beside him, her posture more relaxed than before, though she still held herself with a kind of careful grace, as if afraid that moving too quickly might break the calm around them. The porch lamp above cast a warm circle of light that reached only a few feet, leaving the rest of the street dipped in shadow. Leary lifted her gaze toward that small halo of brightness, watching tiny dust particles float through it like drifting sparks. "Your world is loud," she said gently, "but this light feels quiet." Ethan followed her gaze. "It is an old lamp," he said. "I keep meaning to replace it." She shook her head. "Do not. It looks like it remembers things." Ethan let out a small breath through his nose. Not quite a laugh, but something close. "Maybe it does." Leary shifted slightly, drawing her legs in a little closer as the night cooled. The temperature dropped quickly in this part of the district, the heat from the daytime sun fading into a crisp breeze that swept along the pavement. Ethan noticed the way she trembled just a touch, hardly visible unless someone was watching closely. Without a word, he stood up and stepped inside his unit for a moment, returning with a worn thermal blanket from the back of a storage shelf. He held it out. To her, the fabric soft from years of use. She looked at it, then at him, uncertainty flickering across her features. "May I?" she asked quietly. "It is yours." Ethan shook his head. "It is a blanket, Leary. It is meant to be used." She reached out slowly, taking the fabric with delicate fingers, as if she were afraid it might tear. When she wrapped it around her shoulders, Ethan could almost feel the relief in her posture. She pulled it close, her eyes fluttering shut for a brief second. "It is very warm," she whispered. "I did not expect warmth tonight." Ethan returned to his spot beside her, the steps still warm beneath him from the heat of the day. "You have been walking long?" he asked. Leary nodded. "I walked until the ground hurt my feet. I did not mean to walk that far. I just did not want to stop." "Why not?" Ethan asked softly. She hesitated, her breath catching slightly before steadying again. "Stopping meant thinking," she said. "Thinking meant remembering. And remembering." She paused, the sentence thinning into silence. Ethan did not press her. He just waited, letting the night fill the space between them. After a long moment, she opened her eyes again, looking at him with a quiet clarity. "I did not expect anyone to let me stay," she said. "On my world, a stranger is not trusted. And someone like me." She shook her head gently. "I am not supposed to ask for anything." Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You asked for a place to sit," he said. "That is not much." "To me," she replied softly. "It was everything." The breeze shifted again, stirring the loose edges of the blanket around her. She held it closer, grounding herself against the cool air. For the first time, there was a hint of calm in her voice, a softness that had not been there earlier. "Human Ethan," she said. "This step, it feels like a place someone could return to." He glanced at her, the porch lamp casting a faint gold across her features. "Then you can return," he said simply. She looked at him, a quiet recognition in her eyes, as though she understood the weight of the offer. "Thank you," she whispered. And with that, the night grew just a little warmer around them, held together not by words, but by the gentle certainty that neither of them had expected when the evening began. The porch lamp flickered gently as the night air cooled even further, the kind of chill that settled quietly over concrete and metal. Ethan noticed Leary pull the thermal blanket a little tighter around her shoulders, though her expression had softened since earlier. The tension she carried when she first arrived had loosened in small, almost invisible ways, like knots beginning to untie themselves. A faint hum from a distant power converter rolled across the street, steady and low, matching the unhurried pace of their silence. Ethan rested his hands loosely on his knees, letting the quiet stretch between them. Leary glanced toward him, her eyes reflecting the porch light in soft, silver ripples. "Human Ethan," she said, her voice gentle. "Does your world always end the day this way?" Ethan shrugged lightly. "Most days. Some quieter than others. But this spot, yeah? It ends like this." She seemed to listen not to his words, but to the space around them. "I did not know stillness could feel like this. On my world, the end of the day feels more like an assignment. A list of tasks completed. A report." Ethan tilted his head slightly. "Does it ever feel calm there?" Leary shook her head. "Calm is something earned, and very few have earned it." She paused, fingers brushing the edge of the blanket. "But here, it exists for free." Ethan watched her for a moment, the way her shoulders rose and fell with each steady breath, as if her body was learning rest 1 second at a time. Something about that made him speak softer than usual. You do not have to earn calm here, he said. Sometimes you just sit until the world slows down. Leary looked at him with a quiet curiosity, the kind that held no judgment, only wonder. Do humans choose their own places like this? Most of the time, Ethan said. People have their favorite spots. Somewhere they can think or not think. It depends on the person. And this step, she asked, is yours. Ethan nodded. Yeah, it is worn, but it is mine. It has been with me through bad winters and long shifts. It sort of sticks around. Leary lowered her gaze to the concrete beneath them, touching the rough surface as though feeling. It's history. It must matter to you, she said quietly. Ethan hesitated. He had never thought of it that way. I guess it does, he admitted. Not because it is special, just because it is here when things get too loud. She seemed to take that in, her eyes shifting slightly in the warm glow. After a moment she asked, does it ever say no? Ethan blinked. The step? She nodded sincerely. Does it ever refuse someone who needs it? Ethan let a soft breath out, almost a laugh. No, it is concrete. It says nothing. But you, she said, turning her attention to him. You could have said no, yet you did not. Ethan met her gaze, steady and honest. You look like you needed a place to sit. She held his gaze for a long, quiet moment, her expression thoughtful, almost reverent. Where I come from, she said softly. Kindness is not so simple. Ethan looked away for a second, letting the weight of her words settle. Maybe it should be, he said. She watched him, her eyes softening, something warm flickering behind the usual guardedness. Human Ethan, she murmured. Your world feels strange. But this step, it feels like a choice. Another breeze drifted past, stirring the blanket and brushing against her hair. She pulled the blanket closer, settling into it. Ethan noticed her breathing become steadier, easier. For the first time, her voice carried a faint hint of peace when she added, I did not expect someone to choose to share a place like this. Not with me. Ethan leaned back slightly, letting his shoulders rest against the door behind him. Well, he said quietly, you are here now. She nodded once, her expression soft and earnest. Yes, she whispered. I am. And in that moment, the small pool of light around them felt like its own quiet shelter, held together by nothing more than a shared step and an unspoken understanding. The quiet between them had grown comfortable, settling into the small space beneath the porch lamp like it belonged there. The night air carried a cool edge now, brushing against Ethan's arms and drifting through Leary's hair as she held the thermal blanket close. She watched the street with a thoughtful stillness, her eyes following the faint shimmer of distant transit lights passing far above the industrial block. Eventually, she spoke, her voice gentle. And lo, human Ethan, may I ask something? Ethan shifted slightly, turning his attention to her. Sure. What is on your mind? Leary hesitated, her fingers tightening around the blanket before easing again. Your kindness, does it cost you anything? Ethan blinked at the question. Cost me. She nodded slowly. On my world, kindness is a resource. Limited. Controlled. Given only when permission is granted. She paused, her gaze lowering. So, I do not understand why you would offer it freely. Ethan leaned back against the door, letting the cool metal rest against his shoulders. It does not cost me, he said. Not really. Sometimes it takes time or patience, but that is not the same thing. Leary studied him, her expression marked with an uncertainty that looked rooted deeper than fear. Where I come from, she said quietly. Choices are measured by how much they take from you. Here, it seems you make choices by how much they give. Ethan considered that, the hum of the ventilation units filling the space between them. Maybe, he said, or maybe we are all just trying to make the world a little less hard. Leary lowered her gaze again, tracing a small line on the concrete with her fingertip. I do not know how to trust choices like that, she admitted. When someone gives without asking anything, I do not know what they want. Maybe they want nothing, Ethan said softly. Maybe they just see someone who needs a place to sit. She looked at him then, really looked, her eyes reflecting the warm porch light in shimmering tones of violet and silver. But why you? She asked. Why would a human like you not turn me away? Ethan exhaled a slow breath. Because sometimes people land on your step for a reason, he said. And it does not matter where they came from. What matters is that they are here. Leary absorbed the words, her posture shifting slightly as though she were trying to settle them inside herself. After a moment she whispered, "In my culture, to accept a stranger without question is an act of risk. And an act of honor. Then I guess I took a risk," Ethan replied quietly. "But it felt like the right one." Leary lifted her head, her eyes softening. "I did not think humans held such things," she said. "Honor, mercy, choice. We do," Ethan said. "Most of us try anyway." A faint breeze drifted down the empty street, carrying a hint of cool metal and night dust. It tugged gently at the loose ends of her hair. She pulled the blanket tighter, but her voice carried a new steadiness. "Human Ethan," she said softly, "when I sat on your step, I expected to be told to leave." Ethan tilted his head. "Why?" "Because I am different. And difference is often unwelcome." Ethan looked out toward the street, then back at her. "Different does not mean unwelcome. Not here." The silence that followed was not tense, not uncertain. It was warm, full, shaped by something settling quietly between them. Leary breathed in slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have never been given a place without a price." Ethan's answer came simply, without hesitation. "Then this is your first." She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the words sink into her the way the warmth of the porch lamp sank into the night. When she opened them again, they held something softer, something beginning to trust. The step beneath them stayed silent, steady, holding the weight of two worlds learning, one breath at a time, how to sit together. Ithid binarly and her unthiken Krita step, Leandro led softly industrial block. A low rhythmic thumped hat did not belong to the night. Ethan felt the change of beforefully heard it. The subtle weight had to hold its breath, but Leary's posture changed first. Her head lifted slightly. Hiraez focusing Gonthadar Kindoft street with Thasherpness Sethan had no Tietzian from her. Shekla chid the blanket closer, no tuta fear, butudo recognition, like he a sound from a lift the left far behind. "Human in," she said softly. "Someone he's looking for." Ethan froze for a splitskind, Hishiar giving gay single heavy beat. The streets remained quiet except for hat distant thump. The faint pulsingo fingenis in hovor mode. Buthrus nosig nafanyon. Just long shadow stretching across crack concrete. Area sure, he sked, keeping his voice even. Lyria noddedance, her gazun moving. That pattern, only miconduciate, idis the Markov tracking gunnets. Thesirk forwinderers. Ethan exhaled slowly, Thes statement settling coldly in his stomach. Not because he of danger, not because he of fey crime, but because of what tight might me and herdo. Doyo went metagidi winside, he sked. He was ready to king inualo variety in his door panel, ready taj of a hiding place even though he did not fully understand that of his suffering. Lyra shook her head. "Not here," she said. "Not yet. If they see missing step, they will know." Ethan blinked. "Missing step?" Shinna dead again, her expression earnest. "If I sit in livenish, the ground where last stewed tell Sar patroller switch direction he have a chosen. The will search her care first." It was strange. Almost poetic to her described the spot beneath the mast that ground that their story rested upon. Ethan swallowed lightly. "All right," he said. "Then we'll just sit." Leary geveheim everiza mal great fuel exhale. One a hand relaxing gaunt he'd giof te solid step. Shez it still, listening to thingenipol every precise way. Like sama kudhar than der side of face on. Theera far, she said quietly. The follow paths, not instinct. They will na turn on lissameth than just Scott. Ethan nodded, trusting her intuition. Theer shifted again, gentle boo charged with possibility. Aquistion hesitate don his lips before coming out. "I found the O'Hara tonight, but what were the running Jew from?" Lyriolo werderies, her long silver lashes casting faint shadows across, he vibrant violet off her skin. "Not running," she whispered, refusing. Ethan tilted hissly. "Refusing what?" She swallowed Edens, her throat working around words she had not spoken in a long time. "Refusing assignment. It did not want to lift a thazit form that so a walked. I walked until me fee third, and I walked past a third." Her hands moved absent lie against the blanket. It hot I would keep walking gunta lifeful. But then, eyes your light. Ethan felt the sentence in honest way, something pure in its delivery. "Is the twi cosmos mistep?" She looked at them slowly, that quiet beneath her gaze holding jit sound kind of gravity. "I coast that step because it was not town force," she said. "It was not assigned. It was not patrolled. It was just yours, and I shared it without permission from you." The faint trum blind the air grew softer, drifting farther away. Lyria listened until it was gone. Urbata finally releasing the tension that held her stiff. They will not find Mephisto tonight, she said steel. Notified on it send me. Ethan answered without a need for thought. I am not going to send you away. Lyri turned at her facet toward him. Her expression gentle but weighted. Human Ethan, she said. On your world, I see triliposable four difference being sit together with a depth between. Ethan looped Dathican Crete step beneath them. For an edge warm from the top both of their legs. Yes, Hesed quietly. It is possible. Lyra studied him into silence, her breath slow and steady. The porch lamp shone above a theme in the cool night air, and for the fierce time as in Keshe arrived. She looked like Thanos not just resting, but beginning to believe on something new. The low pulse of distant engines had faded into nothing, leaving the street wrapped in stillness again. The porch lamp above Ethan cast its warm circle of light just far enough to touch the edge of the concrete step, where Lyri continued to sit with the thermal blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her breathing had steadied, but her eyes held a quiet awareness, as if part of her listened to a world far beyond this small patch of earth. Ethan stayed beside her, elbows resting loosely on his knees, letting the silence do the work that words could not. After a long moment, Lyri spoke, her voice calm but carrying a certain weight. Human Ethan, she said, there is something you should know. Ethan turned his head slightly, giving her his full attention. Her fingers traced the blanket lightly, smoothing it in small circles as she gathered her thoughts. The unit that searches for me, she continued, they do not track wanderers because they are dangerous. They track them because they are valuable. Ethan frowned thoughtfully. Valuable how? Lyri hesitated, her violet eyes lifting to meet his. Because we are raised to serve. Our assignments are chosen for us before we even understand what a choice is. Ethan felt his chest tighten slightly, not out of fear, but out of empathy. So leaving was against the rules? Leaving was impossible, Lyri corrected softly. Until I made it possible. She looked toward the quiet street, her gaze distant. I walked away from the place that defined my entire life. But walking away did not free me. It only unsettled everything around me. The cool night breeze brushed past, catching a loose edge of her hair and lifting it for a brief moment before letting it fall back against her shoulder. Ethan studied her carefully, trying to understand the quiet strength it must have taken just to reach his block. If you did not want the life they assigned, he asked gently, what did you want? Lyri breathed in slowly, the blanket rising slightly with her inhale. I wanted to feel something that belonged to me, she said. A moment, a place, a thought, anything that was not dictated by someone else. Her gaze dropped to the step beneath them, the worn concrete now marked with faint dust from their shoes. When I saw your light, she whispered, it felt like something I could choose. Ethan let her words sink in. They were simple, but they carried a depth he could feel in the space between them. I did not know what you needed, he said quietly, but I am glad you chose to stop here. Lyri looked at him again, her expression softer now, almost vulnerable. I chose your step, she said, because it felt like a place where I could exist without being measured. Ethan's voice stayed low, steady. You do not have to be anything here. Not assigned, not evaluated. Just here. Lyri nodded, her eyes glistening faintly in the porch light. That is what I did not understand about humans, she said. You offer space, not out of obligation, not out of hierarchy, simply because someone needs it. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the honesty of her observation settle inside him. I guess we try, he said. Some days better than others. She shifted slightly, turning toward him. On my world, when someone gives something without expecting anything, it is considered rare. It is considered extraordinary. Ethan shook his head gently. Is it extraordinary, he asked, or is it just right? Lyri inhaled again, slower this time. I do not know, she admitted. But when you gave me this step, it changed something. The porch lamp buzzed softly, filling the quiet with a gentle hum. Ethan waited, sensing she had more to say. Human Ethan, she said finally, her voice barely above the whisper of the breeze. When I sat here, I was not asking for space. I was asking to be seen. The words lingered between them, settling on the warm concrete like the softest of truths. And Ethan understood that this was not just a step to her anymore. It was the first moment in her life she had chosen for herself. The night had settled into its quietest hour, the kind where even the distant engines seemed to pause to breathe. The small pool of warm light from the porch lamp felt almost suspended in the darkness, holding Ethan and Leary in a calm that neither spoke about, but both understood. Leary's hands rested gently in her lap. The thermal blanket wrapped around her like a small shelter she had finally allowed herself to enter. She looked toward the sky, where a faint shimmer of high-altitude craft traced thin silver lines across the stars. "Human Ethan," she said softly. "My people will look for me again. Not tonight, but soon." Ethan absorbed the words without reacting, letting them settle like dust on the concrete step. "Do you want me to help you hide?" he asked. "I can make room inside. I can do more than this step." Leary shook her head slowly, her violet skin catching a subtle reflection of the porch light. "No, hiding will not free me, and I do not want to bring trouble to your door." Ethan leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. "Trouble is part of living," he said. "You helped yourself by walking away. I can help by keeping you safe while you figure out what is next." Leary watched him for a long second, her eyes thoughtful, grateful, but carrying something deeper. "You are unusual," she murmured. "On my world, no one gives without needing to own. But you give and expect nothing to return." Ethan shrugged lightly. "Maybe I just think nobody should walk alone when they do not have to." Leary let her gaze drift back toward the step, her fingers brushing its rough surface one more time. "Do you know what sitting on the lower ground means among my people?" she asked quietly. Ethan nodded. "You told me it means asking for peace." She inhaled slowly, shaking her head with a gentle correction. "Not exactly. It means accepting someone as your shield. It means trusting them to stand above you, not because you are less, but because you believe they will not let you fall." Ethan felt the weight of those words in a way he had not expected. Leary continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "When I chose your step, I was not choosing a place to rest. I was choosing a person." The lamp hummed softly above them, its light warming the concrete as though acknowledging the truth she had spoken. Ethan looked at her, studying the quiet resolve settling over her features. "And now?" he asked. Leary turned slightly toward him, the silver in her eyes shimmering. "Now I understand something I did not know before. Humans do not protect because they are commanded. Humans protect because they care." Ethan did not answer right away. He simply breathed in the cool night air, feeling something shift inside him, something gentle and steady. Leary exhaled, her voice softening into something almost like relief. "Tomorrow," she said, "I must decide what to do, whether to keep walking or to stay hidden, whether to return or to break away completely." Ethan nodded slowly. "Whatever you choose, it is your choice, not theirs." Leary held his gaze. "And if I choose to stay near this step?" Ethan allowed a small, warm smile to touch the corner of his mouth. "Then this step will be here." The silence that followed was not empty. It was full, warm, alive in a quiet way that felt like the world had finally stopped rushing around her. Leary looked one last time at the ground where she sat, the place that had carried her first act of freedom. "Human Ethan," she whispered, "this small space you share, it feels like the first piece of my life that is mine." And for a long moment, neither of them moved, the porch lamp glowing softly above, reflecting in her eyes like stars finally finding a place to land.